Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to the B segment of episode 28 of Codename Kids Next Door, Operation L.E.A.D.E.R. We begin this segment with the Sector V operatives of the Kids Next Door fighting the ice cream men in an ice cream parlor, and the Sector V operatives are the ones who claim victory in this fight. Number 3 inquires Number 1 about if they can get some ice cream, but Number 1 responds that they need to return to the Sector V Treehouse. Suddenly, some strawberry-flavored ice cream that ended up on the ceiling during the fight lands on top of Number 1. Most of the Sector V operatives laugh at Number 1, but Number 3 questions why Number 1 gets some ice cream. Back at the Sector V treehouse, Number 1 enters his room, and he's grumbling to himself about how he's covered in strawberry-flavored ice cream because strawberry is not one of his favorite ice cream flavors. Lizzie is shown to be in Number 1's room right now, and she greets Number 1, and Number 1 casually greets Lizzie before he quickly realizes that Lizzie is in his room, and he questions Lizzie, why is she in his room? Lizzie responds that Number 1 promised to take her to the junior high football game that takes place later on in the day. Number 1 responds that he wants to take a rain check on that because he's sticky and tired from the most recent mission that he and his teammates have completed. Lizzie shows sympathy towards Number 1, figuring that he must work really hard as a sector leader of the Kids Next Door. And Number 1 appreciates the sympathy, saying that it's not always easy being a sector leader, but there are some kids out there that do need to take on the responsibility of being sector leaders of the Kids Next Door. Number 1 then excuses himself to clean himself up. So he places his sunglasses on a hook just outside of his bathroom door, and then he goes into his bathroom to clean up. Shortly afterwards, someone tries to contact Number 1 on his computer by video call, and we soon see that the individual is number 65.3, who has, he has some mission specs to give to Number 1. Number 65.3 is surprised to see, however, that Number 1 isn't the one answering the call right now, and Lizzie points out that Number 1 will be back in a moment, but she offers to bring the mission specs to Number 1 once he gets back. Number 65.3 declines this offer, however, saying that mission specs are only meant to be seen by sector leaders. Lizzie's response is to charm Number 65.3. She calls him by his real name of Herbie and inquires him about if he has a new pocket protector, and this works. Number 65.3 decides that maybe he can make an exception to the rule, especially after Lizzie assures him that she'll bring the mission specs to Number 1's attention. So Number 65.3 ends the call, and then he sends the mission specs over. Looking over at Number 1's sunglasses, Lizzie questions herself about if being a sector leader would be so difficult. So Lizzie ends up taking Number 1's sunglasses and wearing them as, she's now wearing Number 1's sunglasses, and she claims to the rest of the Sector V operatives that Number 1 has made her the leader of the upcoming mission, and she offers to treat the Sector V operatives to some ice cream before they formally begin the mission. Number 5 is a bit hesitant at first, but she eventually decides that if Number 1 is okay with this, then she's okay with it as well. But Lizzie says that she also wants to prepare them for the mission with some new outfits, and she's able to convince them to go along with this when she promises each of the Sector V operatives 2 scoops of ice cream. So, yes, the rest of the Sector V operatives with Lizzie leave, and shortly afterwards, Number 1 is all cleaned up, and he's in a clean version of his outfit, or a clean copy of his outfit. and he's questioning if anyone has seen his sunglasses, not realizing that everyone else is gone now. Soon enough, though, number 65.3 calls on the computer again, but he was hoping to talk to Lizzie again, commenting about how he has a new pocket protector, but he's surprised to see that number 1 is still at the treehouse when he sent the mission specs over not too long ago. Number 1 is confused about hearing about mission specs, and number 65.3 clarifies that the mission specs mention a mission regarding investigating the junior high school, because the junior high football team have been practicing anti-kid maneuvers lately. Number 1, however, thinks that maybe they're just practicing for football and nothing more, and number 65.3 concedes that actually might be a possibility, so he says number 1 probably doesn't have to worry about the mission. But number 1 questions about the mission specs being sent before he actually saw them, and number 65.3 explains that he sent them over when Lizzie agreed to show number 1 the mission specs, and he figured there isn't really much else Lizzie could do with the mission specs. Number 1 agrees, but his tone of voice and the look on his face indicates that he's actually quite nervous. So meanwhile, we see that Lizzie has brought the rest of the Sector V operatives to a salon, and we do see each of the Sector V operatives do have 2 scoops of ice cream. So the salon is where, so yes, Lizzie brought them to the salon afterwards so they can prepare for the mission. Number 2 comments that number 1 probably wouldn't bring them to a salon before a mission, but Lizzie responds that her style of leading is different from number 1's style of leading. Number 4 tries to urge number 5 to do something about this, but number 5 is enjoying having her nails done. And outside of the salon, we see another 2x4 technology vehicle flying in the sky over the salon. This is number 1, who's on his way to the junior high school, thinking that his teammates and Lizzie have already arrived at the junior high school. So at the junior high school, number 1 enters the boys' locker room to see if Lizzie and his teammates have already arrived, because the boys' locker room is where the plans for these anti-kid maneuvers are supposed to be located in. Number 1 is able to avoid being spotted by the football players inside of the boys' locker room, and he eventually comes across a chalkboard that at first glance just has strategy plans for a football game, but number 1 quickly figures out that this strategy plan is not for a football game, but for something else. Number 1 is about to say what it is, but a familiar voice finishes number 1's statements for him, and this familiar voice says that this is actually a strategy plan to invade the Kids Next Door moon base. Number 1 immediately recognizes the voice, and he proceeds to continue with the statements that the familiar voice have said, commenting that these sort of plans would have to have been thought of by someone very knowledgeable about the Kids Next Door moon base. And who would be more knowledgeable about the Kids Next Door moon base than the former supreme leader of the Kids Next Door, number 274? Number 1 turns around and confirms his suspicions. The familiar voice belongs to number 274, who's now wearing a football uniform, and there are some other football players with number 274 in matching football uniforms. Number 274 insists that number 1 call him by his real name of Chad, and number 1 responds by calling him traitor, though Chad responds he prefers to think of it as him playing for a different team, one he considers to be better. And number 1, though, questions why Chad is so confident that he'll succeed in this plan when he failed in his plan from Operation End. Chad responds that the coach gave him a foot bomb, a football that's powerful enough to destroy the Kids Next Door moon base, and Chad also adds that he intends to take care of number 1 right now so he won't cause him any trouble. So Chad and the rest of the football players do end up capturing number 1. Meanwhile, on the cool bus, we do see that Lizzie has the Sector V operatives, the rest of the Sector V operatives, I should say, all wearing matching uniforms. And number 2 and number 4 in particular voice disagreement over these matching uniforms. Lizzie, however, responds that she treated them to some free ice cream, so she demands that they shut up. Number 3 doesn't take too kindly to Lizzie telling number 4 to shut up, but Lizzie says that she's entitled to tell whoever she wants to shut up because she's the leader of this mission. And in her anger, Lizzie almost hits number 5's hand, or she may have actually hit number 5's hand. And number 5 is not happy about this because she just had her nails done. So this turns into a moment where Lizzie is telling all the Sector V operatives to shut up, and they're all arguing with her. So back at the junior high school, Chad and the other football players are preparing to invade the moon base. So they activate some controls. So a dome appears over the football field that's in the center of the junior high school, and the junior high school actually starts to float in the air because of jets. But before they can actually set off for the moon base, the cool bus crashes through the wall into the locker room, so Lizzie and the other Sector V operatives have arrived. Chad is angered to see more Kids Next Door operatives have arrived to stop his and his team's plans, so Chad orders his teammates to attack. Lizzie ends up running into a locker, and the locker happens to be where number 1 is tied up in right now. So Lizzie unties number 1, and she returns his sunglasses to him. So number 1 instructs his teammates to fight Chad and his teammates. So the Sector V operatives and the football players proceed to fight each other. And eventually, the Sector V operatives and Lizzie are able to grab the foot bomb, and they make a run for it. They end up coming into the football field that's in the middle of the junior high school, and they see more football players wearing football helmets and having jet-powered shoes. Chad manages to catch up to them, and he introduces them to his invasion force, which he calls the Jets. So the next scene essentially plays out like a football game between the Sector V operatives and Chad and the Jets. And eventually, though, this ends with number 4 scoring a touchdown. If this was an actual football game, number 4 would have scored a touchdown. And number 4 is dancing, is celebrating by dancing and cheering for himself. And then in his during his cheering, number 4 actually throws the foot bomb down on the ground, much to everyone else's horror. So the foot bomb explodes, and the junior high school ends up crashing back into its original position on the ground. The coach is not happy that Chad and the other football players have failed to complete the moon base invasion plan. So the coach orders Chad and the football players to give him 6,000 push-ups. The next scene takes us to the Sector V Treehouse, in number 1's room to be more specific, where Lizzie is apologizing to number 1 for taking the position of leader without him knowing, and she admits that being a sector leader is much harder than she originally anticipated. Number 1, though, is not angry, and he forgives Lizzie. He just requests that Lizzie not try something like that again. And Lizzie hugs number 1 in response to say that she won't. Number 1, though, says he's going to go see... number 1 offers to have some ice cream. So number 1 leaves to go get some ice cream. And after he leaves, number 65.3 video calls the computer in number 1's room. And he has another mission for the Sector V operatives. Lizzie, however, takes off her glasses, and she puts on a pair of sunglasses that resemble the pair that number 1 has. Number 1 still has his own sunglasses when he left to get some ice cream. And Lizzie assures number 65.3 that she'll give the mission specs to number 1. And the ending credits feature the scene where number 4 is celebrating scoring a touchdown by dancing. They play that scene on a loop during the ending credits. So that's how we end this segment. So this marks the first season 3 appearance. Yes, this marks the first season 3 appearance of both Lizzie and number 274, or Chad as he now goes by. And in the case of Lizzie, now, yes, looking at Lizzie's actions in this segment definitely take on a different meaning when you take Lizzie's true identity into account. I still don't want to give that away just yet for those who might just be following along with these videos or who might not have had a chance to actually see the revelation regarding Lizzie's true identity, but we'll cross that bridge eventually. But looking at the segment shortly after it first premiered, Lizzie's intentions come off as being well-meaning. Yes, Lizzie comes off as well-meaning and good intention because she just wanted to give number 1 a break after seeing how hard he works as a sector leader, but she didn't realize just how challenging being a sector leader could be. Now, looking at this segment though with the knowledge of Lizzie's true identity, yes, her motives definitely are brought into question. Like, what are her actual motives now that we know Lizzie's true identity? So, yeah, you definitely look at, I've mentioned it before, you definitely look at Lizzie's actions and motives in a different light when you take her true identity into consideration. Oh, and this segment also seemed to kickstart a rather popular fan pairing, at least from my observations. It seems to be a popular fan pairing. Yeah, I've noticed a lot of fans do seem to like the Lizzie and number 65.3 pairing, and I usually notice this pairing for those who aren't the biggest fans of the number 1 and Lizzie pairing. Although, again, with Lizzie's true identity being revealed, I wonder if there are still some fans of that particular pairing. And yeah, we did get to learn number 65.3's true name, Herbie, and how, yeah, he apparently likes Lizzie. So, otherwise though, with number 1 and Lizzie's interactions with each other, I do have to admit, number 1 and Lizzie actually had some rather heartwarming interactions with each other in this segment. Or at least, number one was rather calm about the whole situation. He wasn't angry at Lizzie. He, at least as far as he knew, he understood Lizzie's intentions as being well-meaning, and he just requested that Lizzie not try something like that again, even though she does end up trying it again by the end of the segment. But again, yeah, it takes a whole different meaning when you take Lizzie's true identity into account. Otherwise, yes, this segment is after number 274 has formally become a villain now, and part of that means he goes by his real name of Chad. And I have mentioned it before, number 274 actually becomes one of the main villains of the series now, and he is one of number 1's arch enemies. And it is rather amusing because number 274's parents first appeared as villains. Or that's right, number 274's first appearance in the series featured his parents as the villains of his first appearance, although his parents were at worst well-intentioned extremists, type 3 anti-villains, at best type 4 anti-villains, nominal villains, and that was really their only major role as villains or antagonists, even though they did end up playing a small role, big impact off-screen part in Operation End because their actions of sending the invitations to certain members of the Kids Next Door operatives for number 274's birthday is what led to number 274's plan in Operation End to wrongly decommission certain Kids Next Door operatives. So yeah, Chad ends up becoming a more prevalent villain in the series than his own parents did, and much more malicious than his parents were, who were more well-intentioned but misguided in their approach. Now, going along with Chad being a villain, however, there actually is more to his betrayal than meets the eye. I don't want to give too much away just yet for those who may not have seen the last parts of the series, or who are just following along with these recap and thoughts videos. But yes, I will mention that Tom Warburton did acknowledge in one of his blog posts that the greater details regarding number 274's betrayal have not been thought of just yet as of this segment. But we'll cross that bridge eventually. But yes, keep that in mind. There's more to number 274's betrayal than meets the eye. But otherwise, yeah, I believe that's it for this particular segment. So, like I said, Lizzie and number 274 got to make their first season 3 appearances in this segment, and number 274 in particular got to have his formal showing as a villain after turning traitor in Operation End. And yes, we'll go on to see more of Chad's villainy in later entries in the series. But for now, there we go for this particular segment. So as of this video, we've now discussed the B segment of episode 28 of Codename Kids Next Door on this channel. Take care, and until next time.